Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alan Witchey, President and CEO of the Damien Center. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm excited to have with me somebody I've known for a very long time, Todd Fuqua. He's a board member of the Damien Center. Thanks for joining me this afternoon.
You're welcome, Alan.
So, Todd, tell us a little bit about why you got involved in being a board member at the Damien Center.
Sure. So I've been a client at the Damien Center since, I think, 2014. I've been HIV positive since 2012. And I actually got involved with the Damien Center because I was leaving a job and was having to give up insurance. And so I had to come and get care. And I remember Susie Murphy was my care coordinator. And she's like, it's very unusual that we have people coming to us who are giving up insurance. And so you guys were really, really helpful in getting me sorted out with that. And then I got involved in the client advisory board. And that opened up the possibility of being on the board. So I chair the client services committee. And as a result of that, I'm on the board. So I'm very excited to be able to represent the clients. And I want to really do a good job of representing all the clients. So I'll put a plug in. We will be restarting the CAB soon. And if you're interested in being a part of the client advisory board, let someone at the Damien Center know, let your care coordinator know. So that's my CAB plug.
Good. You know, the CAB, Client Advisory Board, a lot of people don't realize necessarily that we have this. It's a place where clients are invited once a month. Any client can come and offer feedback, suggestions, ideas for improvements. We try to bring certain topics in. So when we do client surveys, we bring in those results. We have a new program. They can offer feedback about the program. We've had that on hiatus during COVID, but like you said, we're hopefully getting that up and running again. I'm very excited to get that back up and running.
As well.
Even if we have to do it virtually on Zoom, we're going to get it going.
Good.
So tell me a little bit about what U equals U is.
Sure. So U equals U basically means that a person who has HIV, if they're in treatment and they get and maintain a undetectable viral load, that they are not going to transmit the virus to their sexual partners. So it's kind of a huge deal. Like literally, if I'm undetectable, then the virus is untransmittable. And there's scientific studies that support this. It's been endorsed by the CDC, by the World Health Organization, and over 1,000 organizations in over 100 countries. So I actually don't think we're talking about this enough in Marion County. And that's actually one of the reasons why we're here today.
We're here today. We are,
I will say I was really excited as we were getting ready to do this. I saw you all have some little kits that you hand out, and there's actually a U equals U card. So I would love to see billboards with U equals U. I'd love to see bus tails because I think it is an important message to get out in terms of prevention.
I mean, and just to reiterate, how does U equal U work, right? So if you're taking your medication, and if you get an undetectable status, so that means your viral load is low enough in your body, I think it's less than 200 copies of the RNA virus in your body, then you're determined undetectable. And so if I'm undetectable, then I can maintain that. So technically kind of through 2 cycles of my test, then that means I can't transmit the virus to somebody else sexually. Isn't that amazing?
It's huge.
I mean, there was a time when that sounded like almost science fiction. Like we would never get there.
Correct. And I think we should be shouting it from the mountaintops because it's really empowering. If you think about the stigma, like I don't, as a person living with HIV, there's a lot less stigma when I think about like, I can't give this to you, right? And if you think about criminalization, right? There's a whole nother topic for another day around criminalization, for sure. But that's a huge step forward. I also think it's an important part of our public education campaign. So I think people who aren't HIV positive need to understand that, hey, there are ways for people to get treated. And when they do get treated, you know, they essentially are not able to transmit the virus. So it's a huge deal. I think we should be shouting it from the mountaintops or wearing it on our socks. I even have U equals U socks. So that's how much I believe in this.
That is awesome. That is totally awesome. And in a way, it's there's another piece to it too, that if you're virally suppressed, your chances of being healthier are much better.
And that's a really good point. So if you think about, I've got the virus swimming around in my body, right? So if there's a lot of the virus, like when I was originally diagnosed, I think my viral load was like 750,000 parts, right?
Wow.
That was like off the charts.
Right.
Now that I'm undetectable, my viral load is less than 200, right? So there's less of the virus swimming around in my body. It's not attacking my immune system,
Right.
which means I'm healthier and my body's not having to fight that. And so it can do other things. So yeah, it's not only not transmitting the virus, it's much better for people to get into care and to be virally suppressed because I'm going to be healthier.
Yeah,
and that's a huge deal. So yeah.
That's great. Now you've kind of started the idea of doing a campaign around this. So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about with that U equals U.
So U equals U actually was started, I think, in 2016. So it's pretty much global and it's all around the world, which is great. But for me, so I'm also a person in long-term recovery, which means I had a drug addiction, and for 10 years now I've been clean.
And congratulations,
thank you,
by the way.
thank you. And so in the recovery world, we celebrate years of sobriety or years of being clean. I'm 5 years clean. I'm 10 years sober. Same thing with people in cancer. You know, if you're in remission, we have walks for people who are like, I'm in remission for 5 years of cancer. Well, I want to do the same thing with U equals U. It should be something that I'm excited about because I am healthy, right? I'm not having to fight the virus. I'm not transmitting it sexually to my partners. And so I want people to, on the anniversary of becoming undetectable, so for me, every year it's in December, I want people to shout that from the mountaintops. And so I started a campaign called Celebrate You. So Celebrate You. So it's kind of a pun. And there's some hashtags that go with it. Oh yeah. So I introduced this. If you remember, last year I was invited to do a client video for the Grand Masquerade.
Absolutely.
And during the video, literally was my launching of the campaign. So we kind of use these hashtags. So Celebrate You is the hashtag, and then UU means I've been undetectable and untransmittable for 7 years. Awesome. So each December I'll increment that. And then U equals U is the master campaign. So what I'm really asking people to do is every year on your anniversary, print out a sign like this, take a selfie, and post it to your social media. That's the way that we start to educate people and reduce the stigma. And I will also say for Damien Center clients or anybody, if you want to be a part of the campaign, I'll actually take your picture in my studio and put a nice color backdrop on it and everything like that and include it in my campaign. So people can contact me and I will do a free portrait for you. That's how much I want to celebrate U equals U. It's a powerful thing.
I really want to, we've talked about this, we kind of, you know, COVID has interrupted everything, but we haven't really talked about this idea, like how can we really, you know, get more people in and set up a time where lots of people can come in and celebrate because there are so many people that should be celebrating and they don't always. We've started saying things like, you know, when we have somebody in the clinic, for instance, who gets to viral suppression for the first time, we do a little celebration with them in the clinic now. So it's been really great because people are surprised. So we had a donor donate, you know, gift cards for us to be able to do that. So when they reach it, we celebrate and they get like a little present and they can go treat themselves with something. So that's been kind of neat to do as well.
But I think it's kind of like the Arby's bell, you ring the bell.
Yeah, I think
that's great. I had a thought, but I lost it. But no, I think that's great.
And really U equals U, I think there's been like in HIV prevention world for a long time, there's been, you know, a lot of talk around safer sex, making sure you're using condoms, safer needles, you know, all that kind of stuff. And this is really, you know, two new things that have been kind of the arsenal in the new prevention area has been PrEP and U equals U.
Correct.
And so how do you feel about like that? Has it taken off? It hasn't really taken off in the way that you wanted or the things you'd like to see?
Yeah, so it struck me the other day, like we have billboards and buses and vans, right, that say PrEP, but we don't see that the same with UU. So that's where I think we need to get the message out more. I do think both are important, but to be honest, if everyone was virally suppressed, we wouldn't need PrEP.
We wouldn't need PrEP,
right? So that's the important thing. I think for HIV positive people, it gives us something to shoot for. Like there's actually studies that have shown that when people hear that U equals U is a possibility, they're more likely to get tested and they're more likely to get treatment and stay in treatment. So that's big for the HIV positive people. And then for the HIV negative people, it gives them some options too. Like, wow, I can do something about this. I can take a pill. I can get on PrEP. And so I think the two go hand in hand. But again, for me, there's a little bit of an edge with U equals U. I think the science is better, but also we're actually helping the people who have the virus and getting them virally suppressed.
Excellent. All right. Challenge accepted.
Okay.
I'm going to get a billboard up that says U equals U.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that.
All right. All right. You can. All right.
I can because I'm on the board, so I can do that.
You can hold me to it. Yeah, I know that works. That's exactly right. So what's your hope for U equals U? Just imagine, like, thinking forward, would you see us having a large campaign in the community, or how would you sort of imagine?
I think it's lots of things. So I think, a big campaign is good, but I'd like to see it on social media, on the dating apps, on billboards. I'll tell you the other thing that I would love to see, right, is on our portal, because I know we're eventually going to have the portal, right? And I haven't thought this through in terms of all the logistics, but wouldn't it be cool if I'm dating somebody, that I could essentially prove to them, show them that I am actually undetectable. Yeah. So if I could get either a certificate that I could take to them, or send them a link to the portal where they can see, we'll figure out how to do it, but they could see, wow, Todd is actually undetectable. His viral load was checked in March of 2019. We see that on the dating apps. Like, when was the last time you were checked? Right. But if there was a way that we could link that into a system that was certified and sanctified and trusted, think about the power that would give people who are out in the dating world, that they could essentially get a stamp of approval, a doctor's letter. So that's what I really like to see.
But I like that idea. So, I don't know how to do it.
I know. There's lots of things to think through. But yeah, so I think lots of campaigns. I mean, we saw the cards here. I think getting the messaging out in lots of different ways is important. But I do think we need to get the message out more, because some people don't understand it. They don't believe it. And we need to get the science. I mean, there is science to support it. So
now, you alluded to this earlier a little bit, but there's this, campaign around ending the epidemic. And this is the federal campaign to end the HIV epidemic in the next 10 years, right? So tell me, like, what's your vision for how do we get there? What do you think? What are the most important things that we do as we start moving towards ending the epidemic? Because obviously U equals U is an important piece.
It's an important part
that you're thinking about. But are there other things that you think are really important as a community, as a whole community, not necessarily just Damien Center, but as a community for us to think about?
Wow. I think that helping people understand the importance of getting tested, right? Because I did a panel discussion on Friday with 120 IU dental students. And there were 5 or 6 of us who were living with HIV who were talking. And the question that I turned around and asked all of them is, how many of you know your status? I wasn't asking, what is your status? Because I'm not asking, I don't want anyone to reveal that if they're not ready. But by asking the question, do you know your status? I'm getting them to think like, no, I don't. And, and then educating people, the CDC actually recommends that if you're between like 14 and 65, you should get tested at least once. And if you're sexually active or fit into some of the at-risk categories, you should be tested more often than that. A lot of people don't know that. So I think part of the end the epidemic is back to the basics of getting the message out. When we were at the height of the AIDS crisis, everybody knew, like you knew what the rules were, right? I think we've lost that, because I've even had people say to me like, wow, I thought we had fixed that. I thought that was no longer a thing. And I think COVID is a great example to remind people, like, there are still pandemics out there. HIV is still a health crisis. I think Marion County, if I remember correctly, so the way I got involved in telling my story was you guys invited me to do an article in the Indy Star. And that was the first time I ever came out as being HIV positive. It was a big deal. But it also opened a whole bunch of other doors. And one of those was being interviewed on a national platform. And through that, I learned that Marion County is one of 48 counties in 7 states that make up more than half of the new infections. So as good as we think we're doing, and I think the Damien Center is doing a great job, we as a community in Marion County and the surrounding areas are failing at what we do.
Well, they estimate, the CDC estimates there's about 1,000 people in central Indiana that's Marion County, surrounding counties, and kind of the area here that don't know their status.
Right.
So there's that many people out there that don't know their status still. And that's where most of the new infections are coming from.
Because and that's where, for me, I lead with get tested. Do you know your status?
I agree.
And the other statistic I've heard is 1 in 10 people who have HIV don't know that they have HIV.
Right.
And with gay men, it's 1 in 3.
Yeah.
So think about that. So again, that's not to put the fear of God into anyone. It's to say, get tested. So back to your original question, I think it's the messaging. Get tested. This is still out there. It is serious. But like you said, we've got options now. The medication is a lot better. When I was first diagnosed, it was up at Community North, Dr. Norris. I'm going to tell you that story a little because it's actually a good story if you'll enter.
Sure.
So I had red spots all over my body. I went to my GP and they thought it was bed bugs. And then they thought it was an allergic reaction to my detergent. And basically I was misdiagnosed. So I fired my GP after a couple of weeks and went to a clinic. And this was about the time that the Super Bowl was going on. So we had the measles epidemic. So I went to the clinic and they said, well, Mr. Fuqua, we have some good news and some bad news. You either have the measles or syphilis. And what I learned through that, so I did have stage 2 syphilis. I ended up landing in the hospital because I had a septic reaction to the treatment. And what I learned through that is very often HIV and syphilis, HIV and other STIs go hand in hand. So Dr. Norris right away knew that, hey, if this dude has stage 2 syphilis, he probably has HIV. They ran a test, and in fact, I had HIV. So that's where I think it's really important that we educate people. There was probably another point in there, but
I do think that like the fact that everything's connected and that you need to be thinking from a bigger perspective.
You've got to be thinking everything. So the point I was going to make was Dr. Norris told me that at that time, this is in 2012, the medical guidance was beginning to shift because it used to be that if you got HIV, they would tell you to wait until you had signs, certain complications because the medications were not so good. We're now at the point where the medication is good. He said, you have a choice, but our recommendation is now is you start taking the medication today. And literally I went home with a bottle of pills and I'll never forget, I sat in my living room till about 2 o'clock in the morning because I was afraid of taking the pill. Because the other thing he told me that was really important is once you start taking this, you can't stop. Because if you get in and out of care, if I take the meds and stop the meds, I can develop resistance to drugs. I can get complications of living with HIV, and we don't want to go there. So that was a really important lesson for me through Dr. Norris is take your meds, start right away, and here I am today. It took me about 9 months before I became undetectable. So it's relatively quick. They say,
and today, your health, how would you describe it?
My health is phenomenal. It's great. And I don't say that lightly. So in addition to getting my HIV care here, Dr. Cooper is also my GP. So I got one-stop shop. I also see Dylan. So he's my therapist and counselor. And I would not have made it through early addiction, losing my mom, crazy relationships. I was robbed twice. I was drugged and tied up and robbed in early recovery. And that was actually when I was HIV positive. So literally my mental health and my physical health is better than it's ever been.
Good. Gosh, I'm so glad to hear that.
It's a long story to get there, and we all have our story. But you can get there. Like I want people to have hope that there is a better future.
Good. Well, that's a perfect way for us to end. I thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story. I so appreciate you being like open and honest. And
that's the way we're going to reduce the stigma. The more people tell their stories, the more normal it becomes. So thank you and have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate you tuning in and hearing the story of Todd and hearing more about the Damien Center. We'll look forward to seeing you next month and we'll have a new exciting topic.
Thank you.